You can start it, Gus, and we'll be quiet.
Thank you, councillors. And I'd like to start with the acknowledgement of country. The Central Coast Council acknowledges the Palawa-Pakana people as the traditional custodians of Lutruwita, Tasmania, including the land, community, sea and waters where we live and work. Our community respectfully acknowledges the Palapana tribe of the Northern Country of Tasmania, their continuing relationship to this land and their ongoing living culture. We recognise that we have much to learn from the First Nations people who represent one of the world's oldest continuing cultures, and we pay our respects to elders past and present and to all First Nations people living in and around the Central Coast community. And now our prayer. May the words of our lips and the meditations of our hearts be always acceptable in thy sight, O Lord. Welcome, everybody. Tonight we have apologies from Councillor Van Rooyen and Councillor Diprose. It's nice to see people in our audience again, finally, after a couple of years of not being able to have people in the chamber. It's nice to get back to where we used to be. So we'll move straight on for confirmation of the minutes of the council. Can I have somebody move that they be received?
Don't move me.
Councillor Hiskett, seconded Councillor Viney. Any queries on those minutes? Not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Motion is carried. 2.1 is council workshops. There's a list there. You can add 2022 to the 11th of July in the Penguin Creek. Can I have somebody move that that be received, please? Thanks, Councillor Overton, and seconded Councillor Viney. Any queries on those workshops? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Motion is carried. Mayor's communications. I have received some communication from the Honourable Jackie Petrusma, MP. She's the Minister for Police, Fire and Emergency Management. And it says, I'm pleased to, dear Mr. Braden, I'm pleased to advise that you have been appointed as the Municipal Emergency Management Coordinator for the Central Coast Council in accordance with Section 23 of the Emergency Management Act of 2006. The position of Municipal Emergency Management Coordinator carries with it very important responsibilities for emergency management in your municipal area. Thank you for your commitment and dedication to keeping your community safe. And so I would like to present Paul with the certificate as Municipal Coordinator.
Thank you
very much, Paul. Paul actually does a wonderful job representing our council at emergency management meetings. So,
Thank you.
Move on to 3.2, which is the Mayor's Diary. There's a list there. The only change to that was the Apex changeover dinner, which unfortunately was cancelled due to COVID. And they will be running that again at a future date, but I think it might have been the incoming president and perhaps one or two others. So other than that, that is as is. Can I have somebody move that that be received, please?
So move me.
Thanks, Councillor Beswick, seconded Councillor Overton. Any queries on any of those items? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Motion is carried. Declarations of interest. Councillor Hiskett.
Thank you. We'd just like to declare an interest for agenda item 10.11.
No other declarations. 4.1 is councillor reports. Councillors who have been appointed by the council to community and other organisations wish to report. Councillor Fuller.
Thank you, Mayor. I was pleased to attend as proxy for Councillor Hiskett the annual general meeting of the Penguin Surf Lifesaving Club on the 3rd of July. That is their 92nd AGM. What an amazing story, and approximately 30 members of the 30 people out of their membership attended. The outgoing president acknowledged in her report the work about the shared pathway, which obviously goes immediately through their front yard, so to speak, and about the clubs and the community aspiration of future facilities in that precinct, toilets, barbecue areas and so forth. So they are keen to continue conversations with council over the coming years about how we can improve that precinct. And the incoming president is Matt Stones, and all of the main committee roles were filled on the day. So that is also there to be commended for that. So vibrant and great organisation, doing a whole bunch of not only physical wellness things, but for the emotional well-being of their membership and their community as well. So thank you for the opportunity to attend, Councillor Hiskett.
Thank you. Any other reports?
I attended the Central Coast Chamber of Commerce meeting on the 6th of July. They're holding their AGM on the 27th of July in Penguin at the restaurant down
They were last year then.
there.
And you,
Sessions by the Sea. That's it. Thank you. The local business awards will be held on September the 3rd this year. Their business expo is scheduled for early October and is progressing really well. Also, they're putting together a wall of fame for businesses that have operated in the Central Coast for 25 years plus, and quite a few businesses have already participated in this. That's all for the chamber there. But I also attended the UMB AGM a couple of weeks ago or a week ago, and they've had a very good year this year. They had a great event, a Learner Development Day in January that was topped off with a barbecue that the whole club attended and had fun. They're like a huge family. This year the band purchased 3 new Yamaha Neo cornets and a second-hand bass drum, as well as a brand new set of newly designed stand banners. And they thank the Central Coast Council for their ongoing support and instrumental fund. Thank you, Mayor.
Any other reports? Move on to 5.1, which is leave of absence, and we have no applications. 6.1 is deputations, and we have no requests. 7.1 is petitions, there are none, and 8.1 is councillor questions without notice.
No, not at all.
Right, I'll make my own. Councillor Beswick,
no, thanks, Mayor.
Councillor Viney,
No, thanks, Mayor.
Councillor Oak,
No, thanks, Mayor.
No, thank you, Mayor.
Councillor Hiskett,
No.
Councillor Carpenter.
Mayor, yes, one, probably for the GM. There you go. Or Paul. See where it fits.
That's your subject.
It's a subject, yes. That's the rules.
General Manager?
Yeah, that'll do for a start.
Okay.
That's the boss.
Place to start, thank you. Uh, 8.2 is councillor questions on notice, and no questions have been received. Public question time is 9.1, and public question time will be at 6:40. 10.1 is quarterly performance report for the annual plan of 2021-22. Full report there. Can I have somebody move that report be received, please?
So move, Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Carpenter.
Seconded.
Councillor Carpenter, would you like to speak to this?
Mayor, again, we're kept up to date monthly on what's happening, and if people read the report, they might see where we're behind on a few things, but I think it's been explained quite clearly to councillors what's happened in the past year, and we're all aware with what's been going on in our area with the pandemic and everything else. So I think it's written there for everybody to see. It's very transparent. Put it for the vote, Mayor.
Any other Any other speakers? Right, I'll put the motion. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? 10.2 is the common seal, and I think you've got an updated schedule there in front of you. I have somebody move that be received.
So moved.
Councillor Holmes, seconded Councillor Overton. Queries on those items? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Motion is carried. 10.3 is contracts and agreements, and again, we've got updated schedule. We have somebody move that be received. Thanks, Councillor Fuller. Seconded Councillor Thursby. Any queries on that schedule? No, I'll put the motion. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Motion is carried. A correspondence addressed to Mayor and councillors. Again, my notes say there's an updated schedule, but I couldn't see the change. But it's there. A mover, please. Is that you, Councillor?
Yes.
Ronnie?
I'll move that.
A second, please, Councillor Bestwick. Any queries on that correspondence? If not, the motion. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? The motion is carried. 10.5 is Central Coast conduct of public forums as part of the council elections policy. There's a report there and the policy. Can I have somebody move that that be adopted? Thanks, Councillor Hiskett. A second, please, Councillor Fuller. Councillor Hiskett, would you like to speak to this?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, it's the document's pretty straightforward. The addition of allowing candidates to have a statement read aloud in our current challenging times is a benefited addition, I believe. Yeah, who knows what's going to happen on that these days, and you can't just struggle through that. You need to stay home. So that and the rest of the information on there is pretty self-explanatory and will be good for the night.
Any other speakers? Councillor Fuller.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to also acknowledge the live streaming opportunity. We've learned a lot of things about how to live stream things over the last couple of years and how to access things online. So between those two new additions, creates a good opportunity for participation by both candidates and the viewing audience. So I'm really pleased about that.
Any other speakers? Like to close? I'll put the motion. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Motion is carried. 10.6 is the election caretaker period policy of July 22. Can I have somebody move the suggested resolution? Thanks, Councillor Fuller. A seconder, please. Councillor Beswick. Councillor Fuller, would you like to speak to this one?
Just briefly, Mayor, as we know, it's been suggested by the state that councils take this opportunity to introduce a voluntary policy, which just spells out what is allowed and prohibited by elected members in the lead up to the local government election. So we have been one of the councils that have chosen to do that in the name of clarity and transparency. So I appreciate the work that the General Manager has done in putting this new policy together for us. As we've discussed at a workshop situation, I also appreciate the incorporation of the clauses that allow elected members that are appointed to authorities. So in our case, the Cradle Coast Authority and Dalberton Waste Management, to continue to do the work, any work that needs doing as part of those organisations, so that we don't hold up the work of either councils or the authorities, but give us some guidance about best practice and good governance during that time. So I'm pleased to move the policy.
Any other speakers? Not, you don't want to close either, Councillor Fuller. I'll put the motion. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Motion's carried. Councillor Carpenter, I think.
Hey,
you
yes.
can ask your question.
Question.
Eugene.
To the GM, you're unlucky. Thanks, Mayor. It's just I'm asking the GM at every opportunity, if you can, to keep people aware of the potential outbreak of foot and mouth. And I don't know how I was going to direct the question to Paul, whether it's emergency management, whether it's pre-emergency. It would be if it happened, Mayor, and And I know we might joke about things like this and might never happen, but there's a lot of people that do tour to Bali and do tour to Indonesia. And if it did if we do get an outbreak, it'll be devastating. And when I was away at the weekend, they say Tassie'd be okay, but Tassie wouldn't be okay, man, because we wouldn't be able to sell our milk or our meat or our produce anywhere. So it affects us all. So at every opportunity, I would ask the GM to please just keep people aware of the danger this will cause if it does happen here in Australia. It'd be devastating.
Right, move on to community. Oh,
I don't go through Bali when you go away.
No, I just made note of it.
Thank you. Community services, 10.7 is a review of land use planning processes. Councillor Hiskett, you'd like to move?
Yes, should I read that out, I guess?
Yes, and then I'll ask for a second.
Yeah, would like to move that the Director of Community Services researches a more mediated planning approvals process, exploring options available such as requests for the developer to reply to representations, ensuring community and developers feel their concerns are being listened to, and developing an inclusive planning approval culture. The results of this research be presented to councillors at a workshop by February 2023.
Do I have a second? Councillor Fuller. Councillor Hiskett, would you like to speak to this?
Thank you, Mayor. Hopefully everyone has read the document in support of the motion. I think that clearly states out the reasons that I've got for doing this. I think there's been a few occasions, it's not just from one interaction that have happened in the developments that have gone through over the time that I've been on council, that just would have reduced the angst with the conversation. This obviously is not a regulation-based policy. We have our regulations, and we can't demand that developers or representatives do more than that. But if we can help facilitate that conversation in any way, then we can reduce community angst, or we can potentially reduce community angst in this planning process. And the motion is that we research these options. There are other councils that do this in other parts of Australia, and for example, there was a situation with some lights that were staying on. That was in a development application that had some lights, street lights in the area. There was a local nearby that was concerned about the timing of those lights and being on at night. And after a bit of a discussion with the developer, they were quite happy to put a condition in that the lights had to be turned off by a certain time. But because there was no opportunity for those two to talk prior to the application going through, it all came out in the planner's report that came to council, and after that stage there was already that angst that had been generated. Again, obviously there's no requirement in this, and I reiterate that again, that this is not a reflection on the planning staff, because they are absolutely doing a wonderful job in the framework that we've created, but that we as councillors can set that framework, and hopefully with the direction of the director can see an opportunity to better move forward with these development applications, and this is for both the developer and the representative. I think this potential motion benefits both of them as well. So the discussion tonight is whether this motion is a good idea or not how it came to this motion, and happy for if the situation develops into it, for it to evolve to something more than that as well. If during the course of the investigation we find out actually this should move to a better communication to the public on how planning works, which I think is something that is sorely lacking. How the planning authority works, how that interacts with council, and those sorts of things. I think there's potential for this to grow further if it needs to, but I'll leave that at the discretion of the director if it is to pass through hopefully tonight. So other than that, happy to hear the discussion from other councillors and respond in due course of the. Thank you.
Any other speakers? Right.
Oh, sorry, man. I was waiting for the second to go.
I was sure there's going to be one or more.
Well, more. I thought so, man.
Councillor Carr.
Yeah, no, totally support Councillor Hiskett's motion here, and thank you for bringing it forward. And I'm not saying that what we're doing is wrong. What we're doing is legislative, and it's done through the planning process. But I'm sure on both instances there, we could make the process a little bit more amicable and more open, more transparent, so we don't get to the DA stage and we're sitting here and say, no, we're going to withdraw it instead of refuse it and all this sort of stuff. There were one or two little things that can be worked out pre. So I do think it's a great thing to bring forward and sit at the table. Whether it'll change anything going forward or not, we don't know. If it's a voluntary side of things, but it gives people the opportunity to be able to discuss and try and sort out their differences there. So I do, back Councillor Heskett on this and hope that the councillors put it through. Thanks, Mayor.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Again, thanks, Councillor Heskett, for bringing it forward. In the end, there's nothing wrong with having new ideas around any of our processes that might be able to make things better and more streamlined. I've probably got a bigger picture of planning, having dealt with it for so many years, that I think as a council, sometimes we're a bit hamstrung and people don't understand in a lot of cases that we as councillors can only, when we are part of the planning authority as part of the council meeting, we are not councillors, we are the planning authority. And as the planning authority, we are tied to the state legislation. Now, I'm aware that with the Local Government Review Act happening at the moment, that there is going to be some of the areas looked at of the way that councils are part of the planning authority. But what you've put forward tonight is about a review of how we can make the processes better, and there's always ways to improve. But I do think that the whole system has our hands tied to a certain extent as councillors to represent our community, which we can't with us as the planning authority. If we perhaps had, and it's something which I've espoused previously, that if we had the Cradle Coast Authority in a region as the planning authority, we could lobby on behalf of our constituents to that planning authority, but we can't do anything outside the planning authority as we are at the moment in this position. Having said that, what you've suggested is also something that probably could be linked in some process like that, whether we've got a Cradle Coast Planning Authority, for instance. So I agree that in the end there should be some, let's say, negotiation, for the want of a better word, between a proponent and, say, an appellant, and it can smooth things over. As a building contractor over a lot of years, I always used to suggest to people that they go and talk to your neighbour, because the first thing is that your neighbour needs to know, not necessarily needs to know, it's courteous to let them know what you're proposing to do and work through that. And if there's any objections, you can perhaps deal with that before it gets to the planning stage. So that's probably better to deal with that prior to than after the fact, that it's already on paper. So that'd be my recommendation. So on that basis, I'm happy to support the motion for tonight. I think we could go a lot further with that, and that's probably going to happen with the local government review. But thanks for bringing it forward.
Any other speakers? Councillor Viney.
I'd be supporting the motion as well, as I see that it does help with transparency and openness within the planning system. The only thing is, with any changes, I would like to see benefits, in other words, streamlining the planning process rather than bogging it down in discussions between developers and objectors. I really would like to see it help rather than hinder that process. Thank you.
Any other speakers?
Thank you, Mayor. Congratulations to Councillor Heskett for bringing this forward, and knowing a little bit of the backstory as I do, I know that it was in response to, to people who have raised that with you, and so you've heard, as you say, from a variety of sources, some examples of how we could possibly do that better, and thank you for bringing that to us and the research that you've done. To Councillor Beswick's point, it was interesting the Minister of Local Government mentioned last week, didn't he, about how that tension between planning authorities and councils. But at the moment, we have the framework that we have, and this is an opportunity, hopefully, for Central Coast to lead the way in opening up those lines of communications. And as you say, when people are developing something in your neighbourhood, it can quickly escalate to angst and ill feeling, can't it, over something that can simply be resolved or amended if there's a facilitation of those conversations between the parties. So really pleased to support the motion and look forward to where it might progress from there. Congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just think anything that we can do to get a better planning outcome has got to be positive. There have been cases, over the years where we have been able to negotiate a much better outcome, and I know that our director has already been speaking over the last few months of how to get something, before it gets to the point of no return on something, how we can get a better planning outcome, and that's what this motion is all about. So I'm very happy to support it. Councillor Hiskett, would you like to close?
Thank you, and thank you for the support around the table. I have to pick Councillor Viney's point up about the fact that it needs to be process based. It can't be another layer of red tape. That's certainly not what the intention of this is to be. But provided we give that opportunity to developers and representatives to have that communication, and it might just be one, it might just be two conversations. That will be yet to be seen. So. And I mean, acknowledging the fact that this will not solve all the issues. There are certainly going to be times when a developer wants to do X and the representative doesn't want them to do X, and that's it. That's as it is, and that's how planning works, and that's where we sit to deal with that. And I'll make my cheeky comment to John's comments about the planning authority. I think if my motion could be that we take planning back under control of the council, that's what I'd prefer the motion to be. That we as councillors should be able to say whether we think an application should go through or not in our authority, not by taking that authority away from councillors. But the current framework of us acting as a planning authority while councillors, I agree, has a lot of problems. But I would swing it more local instead of further away. But anyway, we'll hotly continue to debate that as it goes through the legislation, I'm sure. And yes, so the idea is that this is to negotiate before the angst, not after the angst. So hopefully, this can get some good outcomes from this. So thank you.
Motion. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Motion's carried.
Right of reply, me.
Sorry.
Right of reply. No.
Sorry. 10.8 development application determinations. Is that
All for it.
no? Can I have somebody move that they be received, please? Councillor Viney seconded. Any queries on those applications? Not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Motion is carried. 10.9 is a request to approve a street name, New Road off River Road, West Ulverston. It's a report there. Can I have somebody move the suggested resolution? Councillor Viney, and then seconded Councillor Beswick. Viney, would you like to speak to this?
Yes, I think it's a rather interesting name. I do note that it's been renamed Place Names Tasmania, not the other name that we all had difficulty with. And so it is a different sort of name, Ron Roy, but I think that's fantastic, and it'll be identifiable throughout Tasmania as a unique name and heritage. Thank you.
Speakers? Motion on all those in favour?
Aye.
Against? 10.10 is council acting as a planning authority. I have somebody move that be received. Thanks, Councillor Fuller. Seconded Councillor Hiskett. Put the motion. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Motion is carried. Down 11, Councillor Hiskett. 11 is a Land Use Planning and Approvals Act. Report on representation to draft amendment, the LPS, to rezone land at 131 Caprona Road, Haybridge, from environmental management zone to landscape conservation zone. Can I have somebody move the suggested resolution, please?
So moved, Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor. Second, Councillor Carpenter.
I think this is pretty self-explanatory, Mayor, and there's an oversight there. And actually, when the representations come in, not really representation, is it? So just push it back through and see if we can get it to go on the right side.
Speakers. All right, I'll put the motion. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? It's carried. After us, Councillor. Lengthy debate.
Yes, time to go for.
Move on to infrastructure services, 10 and 12, Wilmot Road speed limit. There. Can I have somebody move the suggested resolution, please?
So
Thanks,
moved.
Councillor Fuller, seconded Councillor Carpenter. Councillor Fuller, would you like to speak?
Just briefly, Mayor, just to reinforce what has been said previously informally, was that we didn't need to include it in the agenda as a petition as such, but I do appreciate the fact that staff have taken the seriousness of this issue into consideration, and it's been included in the agenda in an appropriate location. It clearly and has been communicated to the constituents that were expressing the concern. It is a little bit complicated. It's a council road, so it's rightly understandable that people might determine the council are in charge of the speed limit. That is the responsibility of state growth. So we will refer it to our traffic management experts who make a determination about the appropriate speed or the issues arising. If they see fit, they'll make a recommendation to state growth, and around it'll go and come back again. So constituents and members of the public are rightly are right if they are somewhat confused by that. But thank you for including it in the agenda. Thank you for communicating with the concerned parties, and we'll wait on the determinations of the Traffic Management Committee and state growth thereafter, hopefully.
No other speakers? I'll put the motion. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Motion is carried. 10.13 is statutory determinations. There's a schedule there. Can I have somebody move that be received, please? Thanks, Councillor Beswick, and seconded Councillor Hiskett. Any queries on those determinations? No. I'll put the motion. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Motion is carried. 10.14 is the financial statements. This is financial statements. Can I have somebody move that be received, please?
So
I don't
moved,
know
Mayor.
what I was going to say there. Thank you, Councillor Carpenter, and second, Councillor Viney. Councillor Carpenter, would you like to say something?
Again, I think, Mayor, the notes are all there pretty self-explanatory. It's good to see that outstanding rates for last year are no higher than the year before, or a tad lower, and the turnover's great. So I think it's all self-explanatory now.
No other speakers? I'll put the motion. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? No. 10.15 is the animal control bylaw. The report there and the updated bylaw. Can I have somebody move that be adopted?
Mayor, I better move that. Everybody else?
Thanks, Councillor Carpenter. A second, please, Councillor Fuller. Councillor Carpenter, would you like to speak to this?
Mayor, I will do. And again, I congratulate council staff on this and getting it through. And it's in our third year or fourth year now since we brought it in. It's that time goes quick. Fourth year or thereabouts. I was just going to reflect back to the reason why we have a bylaw, Mayor, is because of all the problems and the complaints we was getting from around town with animals that were out of control, or animals that shouldn't be kept in town as seen by other people. So it took a while to get this bylaw through. About 18 months, I think, in in writing it all up and getting it through and getting it into place. Since then, it served us well and served and controlled a couple of them problem areas that were outstanding and we had to resolve. So I congratulate staff on bringing it back for the review and a couple of little changes that's made. And I think when you look at the consultation process that's gone through by staff with the poultry group and the beekeepers and everything else, that, you know, when you sit around the table and you discuss bylaws, you think a bird's a bird. You just no idea how many categories of whatever people might be keeping. So every time we review stuff like this, I think there'll be an odd change or two, but congratulate council on accepting the changes and hopefully makes it so it's user friendly by all parties. And it's a bit like a motion we spoke to a while ago. It's all right for us as council and councillors to sit and say, we'll have this in place. But if it completely alienates our people on the other side that have got a put with, it's of no value. So I think this policy is of great value, this bylaw, and commend it to the table, Mayor. Well done.
Thank you. Any other speakers?
No.
The motion, all those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Motion is carried. That brings us to the end of our open part of the meeting, except for public question time, and we might start that now at 6:35 rather than 6:40. We have received some questions. Did you want to do the questions?
We'll do them first.
Yeah.
Right, we've received 4 questions in, which I'll read out the questions and the responses to. So the first one's from Alan Appleby at Knights Road, West Ulverstone. So the first question is, where does all the storm water flow from Herbs Road and proposed South Road mega service station developments flow? And where is the discharge point of said water, as Knights Road and Rockmarsh Place are subject to flooding? I have included photos of the last flood. With such a large catchment area of roofs, roads, pavement, etc., it equals 1 litre of water per square metre of area. As we live in interesting so-called climate change times, I believe councils have a moral obligation to make sure these developments do not have an adverse effect on people downstream and their lifestyle. And I have included photos of flooding in this area, which we have received. The response to that question is the development will be required to comply with Council Stormwater Detention Policy 2022. This policy requires that developments do not adversely impact on the performance of the local stormwater drainage system or cause an unreasonable flow of water onto downstream property in all storm events up to and including the 100-year average recurrence interval or 1% annual exceedance probability storm event. This aims to restrict flow to those existing before the development. The applicant has proposed on-site stormwater detention with overflows directed to the Bass Highway Road Reserve. The Department of State Growth has consented to this arrangement. Question number 2 from Mr. Appleby is, what environmental studies have been done on the South Road Mega Survey proposed development? For example, bird life, lizards, frogs, burrowing crayfish. As a former agricultural landowner wanting to do major or minor land works, we're expected to do some or all of these environmental studies. The response is, while the site is subject to the planning scheme's Natural Assets Code, an environmental study isn't required as it is a substantially modified landscape already cleared of native vegetation. Furthermore, no threatened species or vegetation of significance has been identified on this site. The Bass Highway Road Reserve does contain some native vegetation, and the Department of State Growth will determine the extent of any clearing allowed there. The proposal is on public exhibition until the 9th of August and can be viewed on the Council's website or at the Admin Centre. Residents who have concerns about the proposal should make a representation during this time. Any representations received will be considered by the Council acting as a planning authority and reported to the Tasmanian Planning Commission, along with any recommendations regarding the application. The Tasmanian Planning Commission will have the final say. Now, the next two questions are from Brian Tyndall, also of Knights Road. I'm going to go through both the questions at one time because the answer is the same to both. So it just saves me repeating the answer. So the first question is, in addition, the Tasmanian Planning Scheme provides clarity regarding the codes which apply to Pacific zones. Clear policy intent has been to avoid undermining the purpose of key urban development zones by the inappropriate application of codes. To enhance livability, these residential zones also allow a range of small-scale business and retail uses to activate and encourage walkability within our communities. The zone requirement also ensures appropriate amenity is maintained by ensuring any business and retail uses are of an appropriate scale for the residential zone. And that's a quote that Mr. Tyndall has got from the Tasmanian planning area. I believe any reasonable person would conclude that a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week mega servo catering for B-double vehicles, etc., would not be the intent of the Tasmanian Planning Scheme as intended. The second question is, would the Council consider withdrawing their approval for DA 2022-010 as it may not comply totally with the planning instrument being the Tasmanian Planning Scheme Central Coast? The response to both of those questions is, as the proposal involves a change to the Tasmanian Planning Scheme Central Coast, the Tasmanian Planning Commission will have the final say. The Council has simply agreed to the applicant's request to initiate a process whereby the proposal can be considered further. The proposal is on public exhibition until the 9th of August and can be viewed on the Council website or at the Administration Centre. Residents who have concerns about the proposal should make a representation during this time. Any representations received will be considered by the Council acting as a planning authority and reported to the Tasmanian Planning Commission, along with any recommendations regarding the application.
Thank you. Now, do we have any questions from the public? If you'd like to just state your name, if you can stand and state your name.
Good evening, Mayor, councillors, ladies and gentlemen. Peter Negan is my name. I'm a resident of Wilmot Road, and I have concerns about the speed limit and have done. I've been a resident there for 22 years. I've seen what has transpired to today with regards to the volume of traffic, speed of traffic, etc. A petition was gathered, of which I was a signatory this evening, that because it didn't fit the criteria, that a report has been made and is in your hands. My question is, can this petition be refigured, or does it have to be re-signed by all the petitioners? Because this is what it really is about. It's not just about a report with respect. It's about a petition with the residents of Wilmot Road all having their concerns, all being subjected to intimidation by cars travelling very fast, heavy goods vehicles travelling very, very fast, motorcycles, everything has increased. It used to be, when I first moved there, you'd see horse riders. That has changed massively. The road is a minimum sort of 6 metres wide. I'll say minimum because the edges are broken. And as council will know, every 18 months to 2 years, you have to go along and fix the edges. They last about 6 months before they break away again. As I say, do we have to rejig the petition or re-sign to get everybody on board again, to give us a little bit of clout, if I may say, regards this petition and our feelings?
Thank you. I think I can quite honestly say that your what was to be your petition was certainly taken very seriously here. And it was just by a small omission, or I'm not quite sure exactly of the details as to why it couldn't come to council as a petition. But it was certainly taken seriously in the fact that it has been part of our agenda tonight, and there has been a report written, and our director is certainly taking that further, and we will be looking into the speed limit. We've certainly taken all of that on board. Paul, is there anything that you can add, and perhaps about the process?
Not a lot, but effectively, if we wrote the report that we did for a petition, it would have been very similar, if not almost identical. So what we have explained in that report is what we would have done if it were a petition. So we will treat that tonight as though it were a petition effectively and move it forward that way. So it's not being treated any differently by being a report rather than a petition, but it's certainly being treated very seriously, and we will follow it through in our relevant channels at council.
And so the process of changing a speed limit, how would you, are you able to share that?
Yes. So process will be that we will need to do a series of investigations into the information that you've provided. And we'll do our own investigation as well, and our traffic committee will consider all of that information as to whether we believe the speed limit is warranted. If it is deemed warranted, we make that recommendation to State Growth, and they are the responsible authority for the speed limit being adopted. But as you've probably heard, it is council road, so it's ours to make that recommendation. If we deem it not to be, then that would be a case of coming back to the community, but I don't want to preempt whether it is or isn't. I'm just saying that's the process.
Did you want to
I just also say that petition, we've attached it to the agenda items, so that we've still got all your information, and the people who signed it, we still have all that as part of it. So none of that's been lost, is what you say.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Sorry,
Yes, first.
yes, good evening, Mayor, councillors. My husband and I actually initiated this petition on general correspondence, and I just wanted to say thank you for including the correspondence in your agenda. And I guess my question is around the time frame, because I don't know how these things work. Is there any indication? I mean, I understand that there's a few channels you have to go through, but is there any indication how long this will take?
Generally, it would be a couple of months as a minimum. So it will go to the next meeting, which will be at the start of August. And from there, it depends on how much information we need. So if we'll do our own traffic counts, for example, that will be a month's worth of traffic counting and time taken up. So it's more than likely at least 2 months before we come up with a determination of some sort.
Yeah, well, that's fine. And would there be correspondence coming back to us what the outcome is, or?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, good. Well, thank you very much.
Mr. Appleby.
Thanks for the agenda, fellow councillors. More of a request than a question. Would you people consider bringing a bus or cars down and having a look at the Knights Road area in concern of what we have through this mega service station? I don't know how long, since I've been here 9 years, I haven't seen a councillor down in that area. Now, I'm in that, I'm not always there, of course, but I think then again, the councillors should just take a bit of a tour around the district, have a look, ask a few questions. You don't have to be there for long, 10 minutes, quarter of an hour, and just, yeah, a bit of public liaison, I would call that.
Are you speaking about coming to talk with the residents or just to have a look at the area?
Yeah, we'll have a look at the area and then maybe you can see our concerns because there's quite a few petitions we've sent out. I've been one that's been involved in it with a group of other people. I'll admit to that because it concerns me quite considerable that I bought an area of ground there due to health reasons, both physically and mentally. And I'm not locked into a 600, 800 square metre block. I don't have to talk to my neighbour if I don't want to, but when you're in 600 or 800 square metres, if you see him over the fence, you're obliged to talk to him. So I would just like the council to come and have a look, have a few minutes talk. It doesn't have to be a half hour or an hour, and just have a look at our concerns. Thank you.
Nothing else I can say to answer that one, but suggest that we've taken that on board and thank you. Any other questions? Thank you all very much for coming in tonight. As I said, that's the end of our open part of a meeting tonight, and it is nice to see people in our public gallery. Thank you for your attendance. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
I'll asked him on the road down there the other day. Alzheimer's disease. Hey? I lost a jar out on the road down in there last Tuesday. But they did.
Sorry?
All recorded now.
Yeah, I've been down. Nice race. Yeah. I was talking to another resident from down there the other week. I rang him about doing some work.
Then
Who's on?
3 or 4 cars should all go down there. Some cars for the month.
Closure of meeting to the public.
I know